Evie drifted slowly towards consciousness, as though emerging from a thick fog. She tried to open her eyes, but her lids felt weighted with a dull heaviness that filled her head. Her body was stiff, her muscles aching as though she hadn't moved in hours, and a faint smell lingered in her nose and in the back of her throat, something chemical and sweet. The scent brought back a fleeting memory, less a memory really than a sense of dread or danger or... The memory hovered, just out of reach, but the unsettling sense of dread remained, making her pulse skip and quicken. What had happened to her? Even her thoughts felt sluggish and slow, but as she bobbed closer to the surface of full consciousness, like a swimmer rising through deep, dark water, she realized that she could hear a man's voice speaking somewhere nearby. Is she awake yet? No. Evie's heart jolted against her ribcage and her eyes flew open. No, she had to be unconscious still and dreaming this. Paul was dead, shot down by a German fighter plane while flying a mission for the RAF. He couldn't be somewhere close by, speaking in what sounded like the next room. A woman's voice answered. Not yet. I looked in on her about half an hour ago and she was still unconscious. Hans used a lot of the chloroform. It could be hours yet before it wears off. Evie frowned. She knew the woman's voice too, although for the moment she couldn't place it. But she'd heard it somewhere, and recently at that. I need to leave soon. The man's voice spoke again. Paul's voice. It was Paul's voice. Evie was certain of it. And with that certainty came an avalanche of memories in a sudden, pulse-pounding rush. Her visit to Paul's parents' house in Greenwich, finding the door ajar, entering, and then being attacked from behind, and then nothing. Now she was lying on a bare mattress in a dingy, windowless little room. Evie tried to sit up, but her muscles were uncoordinated and unsteady, and her head swam with dizziness. She had to content herself with letting her gaze sweep the place, taking rapid stock of her surroundings. Greyish paint peeling on the walls, the smell of must and damp that pervaded a place when it had been left empty for too long, floors that were covered in a thick layer of grime and dust, and Paul speaking in the next room to the woman Evie had thought was his mother, but who in fact must be nothing of the kind. Almost immediately, other pieces of the puzzle fell into place with the impact of concrete blocks being slapped together to form a barricade. But although the full implications left Evie breathless and with a cold, hollow feeling spreading out from under her ribcage, the pattern those puzzle pieces made was dazzlingly plain. I'll just go in and make sure there's nothing she might use to escape, Paul said. The walls in this place must be practically paper-thin. His words came through quite clearly. Of course there isn't, the woman sounded indignant. There's not so much as a stray matchstick. We made sure of that before we put her in there. And besides, the door's locked. Paul laughed shortly. You don't know her. I've seen her disarm a man using nothing but a loaf of stale bread and pick a lock with a bent hairpin. Evie supposed it was gratifying, if unfortunate, to hear that Paul wasn't likely to underestimate her abilities. But the next moment she heard a step in the passage outside of her door and the rattle of a key in the lock. She had barely a split second to drop back down on the mattress, close her eyes, and force her breathing into the deep, even rhythm of sleep. Then she heard the door swing open. Paul stood in the open doorway, looking at her for a long moment. Evie didn't dare risk opening her eyes by so much as a sliver, but she could feel the weight of his gaze. Then his voice said softly, Evie? Evie's mind spun, flipping through the possibilities. With anyone else, she might try feigning unconsciousness, but Paul knew her. They'd spent weeks sleeping side by side as they escaped German-occupied France, and then they'd been married, even if only for a short few months before word had reached her of Paul's death. There were a good many words she would have liked to use to describe Paul at this moment, but, also unfortunately for her, stupid would never be one of them.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it. at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.